Rink Rats, what's up? Happy November 11th, Season 9, Episode 11. We're going streaking. 3 in a row. The Hawks have won 3 games in a row. How about that? Are the Blackhawks for real? That's what's going on tonight. Jimmy O'Malley's here. Sean Fitzgerald is here. I'm still Andy Campbell. I was gone last week, but I still am me. That's right. And then Tab Bamford might be joining us tonight, folks. Blackhawk author and Bleacher Nation writer. Tab has got a lot of expertise on the Hawks. He might be joining us in 20 minutes to a half an hour. But in the meantime, before he gets here, we're going to get going. Guys, what's up? How about them Hawks, huh? Jimmy, what do you say?
They're my sports saving grace right now. I mean, Vikings suck. The Cubs are about to sell everyone worth of value, and they're going to suffer more biblical losses and sell off all their good players. But thank God for Connor Bedard.
Absolutely. And frozen Jimmy and Connor Bedard.
Yeah, Jimmy's playing there.
He just froze. Anyway, yeah. Shawnee, you feeling the same thing? How much fun has this been these last 3 games to wrap up that road trip?
It's been awesome. So I know you weren't on the last show, but Jimmy and I both predicted the Hawks would go 2-0-1. And we were wrong. They went 3-0. 3-0
games.
And Bedard's going to gather all the headlines, which is awesome. Yeah. But other guys are really contributing. Like Tyler Bertuzzi has taken off. And Andre Burakovsky is a huge asset to this team, I think, especially playing with Bedard. And then those guys have helped Bedard ascend to where he's at right now. And they're scoring points. They're having fun. That move that Bedard put on Dustin Wolf was amazing.
Yep. Pretty good steal and score. Yep. And, So, the Killer Bees line, we're going to get into that. The Hawks have had all-world goaltending.
Yes.
By the way, I mean, that's been, both Spencer Knight and Soderblom have been absolutely outstanding. Before real quick, getting into Connor Bedard, if you post a take tonight, folks, you get a chance to win a t-shirt from 500level.com if you post a take for tomorrow's game against the New Jersey Devils at home. Also, the Rink 26. That code gives you 30% off of our sponsor, 500level.com. Great t-shirts. Make sure you check them out. They're outstanding. Let's talk about Bedard here. And Jimmy, I want to start with you real quick. This is a different guy. After the Blackhawks beat the Detroit Red Wings on Sunday, they won 5-1. Bedard had a trio of points after having 4 against Calgary, giving him 7 points in 2 straight games there. And at the time, he took over the NHL scoring lead of 25 points, and then Nathan MacKinnon went off the following day and has 29 points. But this is a different player. And I know we've said this before, but this is a different player. This is a 200-foot hockey player. Connor Bedard, is he driving the Hawks here? There's a lot of good going on, but he's the guy. Let's talk him. Let's talk Celebrini. Let's talk Olympics. What do you got, Jimmy?
Well, it's pretty clear that Connor Bedard had either a mandate from his coach or a personal mandate that the keys are in his hand. It's time to drive the bus. This team goes where he goes now. And what we've seen so far this season is a young leader, a young kid at 20 years old has just said, I'm being entrusted to do all this stuff. I'm going to do it. And I think that's something that's really impressing not just fans, but even his teammates and coach. And you mentioned, too, bringing up Celebrini and the Olympics. I can't imagine that not being a big motivation for him. He skipped out on the World Championships this summer to work on himself. Mm-hmm. Canada did not play well. I don't even think they medaled in the World Championships, or they got bronze. And he came in and just, 25 points so far in the season. I think, if I remember correctly, he has, in the same amount of games, in the previous 2 years, I think his season high was 12. Now it's at 25 at this point in the season.
That's wild.
So, if he's not getting serious talks about joining the Olympics, if Team Canada isn't looking at him and going, this kid can absolutely play the entire ice on the Olympic level, I think they're joking themselves.
Yeah. It's interesting, Jimmy, you just mentioned the World Championship. Scott Powers had an article, I think that was released today from The Athletic, and he talked about the differences in Bedard's game and what has led to his strong start in his performance. Obviously, the increasing in speed, increasing in strength. He's dedicating time to being a complete player, playing in every zone, faceoffs, etc. But I don't think people recognize enough stepping away last year from hockey and not doing the World Championships. I mean, from the minute he was drafted number 1 overall, he was in the spotlight for 18 straight months. You know,
he's been in the spotlight since he's been a kid.
Yeah, then he had an injury, and then he had, you know, what a lot of people say was a sophomore slump, and then he finally just said, "I just need to get lost for a little bit here." You know, I'm 19 years old. I'm not going to the World Championships. I'm going to rest. I'm going to train. I'm going to get better. But I think that was a huge part of it. And Shawnee, what do you think? I mean, obviously, plus, I mean, the difference between being 18, 19, and being 20, there's a physical maturity that happens. But talk to us, Shawnee, about what you think about Bedard's game so far, and
so he's
in the Olympics and Celebrini and all that.
He's so Connor Bedard came out and said earlier today to TSN that he will do anything he can to make Team Canada. So obviously that's on his mind. And I think if Canada's not giving Bedard and Celebrini a legitimate look, like they're making a mistake. These two, not only are they good for the game in terms of international, they're just playing really well.
Yeah.
To use a euphemism that described Reggie Jackson, Connor Bedard is the straw that stirs the drink right now.
It's a good one.
So his offensive game has elevated guys like Burakovsky and Tyler Bertuzzi. And like, even though Frank Nazar was struggling and then hurt, other guys were able to step up because of how well Bedard's been playing.
Yeah. And
I think, like everyone said, like he worked on this. Also, one other thing about his training in the offseason, what Frank Saravalli said, I believe I can't remember where he said it, but he said it someplace. Connor Bedard also streamlined his training. Like, he was just training to train. He didn't really have a purpose in the off seasons. And now he does. He has a purpose, like he wanted to increase his speed. He wanted to get better in the face-off dot. He wanted to win more battles with the stick, board battles. Like, he streamlined his process in the offseason, which I think has helped him immensely this season. But then also, I think one big thing that helps Bedard, consistency. Burakovsky's been on his line pretty much the entire year, and that is the first time in 3 seasons that we've really seen a consistent line mate that can play with Bedard on that level.
Yeah,
like,
no, it's certainly he's around better players now.
Yeah, and Burakovsky played with Nathan McKinnon in Colorado. He played when he was with Washington. He played with Kuznetsov. He played with TJ Oshie. He played with Ovechkin. Like, he's played with top tier guys, so he understands that like level of talent to play with. Like, Bedard's not out there with Philip Kurashev anymore, which I know Sharks fans are enthralled with, but he's not. He's
give it a week.
Yeah. And Burakovsky, I mean, Burakovsky's reborn. I mean, he's playing some of the highest level hockey he's played in his career. I mean, obviously he's got cups and but yeah, I mean, he's been a fabulous addition. I get what's so interesting is that, so I mean, TSN today, Craig Button and Mike Johnson released what they think will be Team Canada, a Team Canada prediction. And Connor Bedard is not on there, and Macklin Celebrini is. The general consensus around, if you were going to take a league-wide poll and a fan-wide poll, a lot of people think if it comes down to the two of them, Celebrini's got the edge over Bedard. Why is that, Jimmy?
I just think there's a perception, and it is backed up a little bit by the stats. He's just more consistently a 200-foot player. He was a 200-foot player when he was a rookie. He's a little bit better at the dot. And I think that has carried over in excess this year, where he's up there with Bedard. I think he's 3rd or 4th right now in the NHL in points, right up there with Bedard. I think he's at 23.
High gate.
So, I mean, I think that plays a huge role. He's just a little bit more consistent. I think people look at Bedard and they go, oh, great start. Can he maintain it? Is this who he is, or is this a hot start? What we're seeing with Celebrini is just improvement over what we've already seen. So maybe that's what's giving him the edge.
Recency bias.
Yeah.
Maybe a little recency bias.
I mean, he does. Yeah. I mean, I'll give it to Celebrini. I mean, Celebrini's a hell of a hockey player. He definitely has a little bit more consistent elbow grease to his game. I mean, people seem to think that you can put him on the wing in a 4th line role. I guess the thing about Bedard that it all depends on the makeup of Canada and what they want to mix in. Now, if this is played like the Four Nations was last year, I can see why Bedard might not make it. I mean, if it's going to be one of those, the Kachuk brothers come out and the Olympic Village wants to see, that brand of hockey where everyone's dropping them and Canada and USA are going at it. I mean, you saw, Button and Johnson even had guys like Tom Wilson on the roster. And so, I mean, if it becomes big boy, muck it up in the corners hockey, I do see a world where Bedard is left off. But why can't they both be on there? Why does everyone say one and not the other? That's what I don't quite fathom. And how does Bedard need to be, and in what position does he need to be to make the team? Does he need to be top 5 in scoring by whenever the team is made? When are the teams made anyway?
I thought soonish, right?
I think the big thing is just, like some guys are like, they want a more traditional lineup. So even if they have like a big name on the third or fourth line, they want a guy that they can play a third and fourth line guy. You think Sam Bennett, Brad Marchand, you think like, oh yeah, these are first line guys, but their skill set translates a little bit more to the traditional third and fourth line guy, probably a little better than Connor Bedard. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't agree with it. You take the best talent and you do the best you can with it.
Sure.
But that's probably the belief. It's, we need a guy with a little more experience. Mm-hmm. We need a guy that plays a little bit more of that like defensive third, fourth line game. We need to kick out, Jeff Osborne a couple more times.
Jeff, come back. I wanted to ask you about goalies.
Jeff, you're not allowed.
Now he's back.
I'm not done talking, Jeff. You just in and out. But
maybe he's just leaving because you're talking so much.
I know.
Oh, I'm just kidding.
It hurts, Sean.
I'm just kidding, Jimmy.
What were you saying? Finishing his thought, Sean.
Sorry, I'm a jerk.
Now you hurt his feelings.
That's not very nice, Sean.
No. I know. I'm supposed to be nice.
Would you like to finish your thought?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, the kid's flying. We know that. Now that we've got the gatekeeper, Jeff Osborne, co-founder of the Rink and goalie guru, let's talk goalies. Jeff, Spencer Knight has been insert blank. Insert word.
Hold on a second. Yeah. Just want to make sure my mic settings are right. This is kind of an impromptu thing. I was just coming out here to make sure you guys, the setup was okay. Spencer Knight, there's been a lot going around, about, that he could or could not be, like generational or some craziness, and the other day, the prospect Don guy, he had something up there and I said, wow, his stats, the way they are right now, are not sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that we can't be happy with with what's going on and how he's playing.
Yeah.
Because I am I think he's playing great, but it's not sustainable. And a lot of it has to do with the advanced stats with the goals saved above expected and all that stuff. And he's playing at a pace that nobody has had in the advanced stat era. And he's in you could go around and say that he could be breaking into being that guy, but it's not likely. He could be a very good player, but is he going to be like the greatest of all, the greatest goaltender of all time? Probably not.
No,
likely not. So it's he's playing very well, but he's playing in over his head. He's carrying this team a lot.
Yeah.
And so for that matter, so is Arvid Soderblom. They're just playing very, very well, and they're going to come back down to earth. Things are going to come back down to the mean, down to the average, and that's fine. That's still very good. And I don't want people to hate on Spencer Knight. I'm a huge Spencer Knight guy. I'm a huge Arvid not huge Soderblom guy, but I'm happy that he came back from what he was 2 years ago, where he was just awful and couldn't save a puck. And what they've got in Rockford is great. And my guy, Adam Guyan, I gotta say it. Sean, you posted it today. My guy, Adam Guyan's my guy. I think that at the end of the day, he might be the best guy they got down the road. So, Blackhawks goaltending is really good right now. There's a lot to look forward to, but don't get in over your head. Just let's be pragmatic. Let's be realistic about it.
Mm-hmm.
Things are going to come back down to earth a little bit, and down to earth still can be very good. So
down to earth's good. Yeah. Folks, are thank you, Gate, and we'll continue on with the goalies. But folks, our guests.
I'm going to split. Tab, thank you very much for coming on, buddy. I'm going to let you guys take it from here, though.
Well,
you guys
bye,
did
Jeff.
a great job. Continue on. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks.
We just yanked the goalie.
There it is. Yeah, pull him right now. Yeah, folks, we want to welcome Tab Bamford. Tab, thanks for being here. Tab is a Blackhawk author. He's got 2 books on the Blackhawks, the most recent one on Connor Bedard. He's got great reviews on Amazon. You should check it out. And he writes, say again. And Tab has a good beat on the team. He writes for Bleacher Nation, following Tab all the way back to his Bleacher Report days back 12, 13 years ago. Those were fun times. But Tab, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be with you guys.
Awesome. So we were just talking about the goalies, and we were just talking about a little bit earlier we were talking about Connor Bedard and his start and the Celebrini Bedard Olympic debate, and just curious to put you on the spot right away, if that's cool, just your thoughts on it, what Bedard needs to do to make the team, and why is it always one or the other? I mean, there's a chance if they're both in top 5 in scoring, do they both make it? Or and just thoughts on Bedard's start in general. Would love to hear your takes.
Well, let's start with the Olympic thing, because I think that's dirtier but a little bit easier to answer, and the whole Celebrini thing. Look, I think what's unique about Connor McDavid when he came into the league and the way that he ascended to being the undoubted alpha, at least from a production perspective in the NHL, is that there really wasn't a rival for him. That no one wanted to be like, it's McDavid versus Pasternak, right?
Yeah.
You had, Taves Bergeron, Taves Kopitar, but certainly I think you have now a third generation of young NHL players that are living in a Crosby versus Ovechkin world. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We still, ESPN, that's the only thing ESPN promotes for the NHL is Crosby Ovechkin when they get that game on the 4-letter network. So I feel like there's a little bit of a need from the macro hockey establishment media to create something where there really isn't maybe necessarily something. I don't think Crosby and Ovechkin were best friends when they came in, but they get along great now. Yeah. Right. So I think that it's good for the game when you have rivalries. I think when you have them both in the Western Conference, you want to build that into 2 franchises that could theoretically be playing against each other for something meaningful someday. You look back at the Taves, Kane versus Marleau Thornton days, and those were really, really freaking good hockey series. So maybe there's a little bit of a trying to make it something out of maybe nothing. I think the fact that they were, number 1 overall picks in consecutive years, and Celebrini is probably, if we're really honest, far, far exceeded what a lot of people were selling us he could be. Remember, like all the draft guys like Pronman and Wheeler, who I love their stuff, but they were like, there's a big gap between Bedard and Celebrini. Like Celebrini's a clear-cut number 1. He's going to be a number 1 center, but there's no competition here. And then like he goes to college for a year and he comes out and it's like, oh crap, like maybe he's better than we were told 12 months ago. And that's what finishing puberty does with athletes, right?
Yeah,
like maybe the difference between 16 and 20 is
I don't know. I never finished. So
but that's a big part of Bedard. I mean, being 20 years old now and being physically developed, huge part of his game now.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is full marks to Bedard for being as, self-aware, and I'll say professionally mature as he is. He watched Ryan Donato come in and have an okay first season and go back to the drawing board and bust his ass for a summer, working on his skating so that he could be more competitive with an up and down Blackhawks team. And then he came out, and I think no one's going to put Ryan Donato from a hockey skill perspective in the same class as Bedard. But if you go back and look at the difference between year 1 and year 2 for Ryan Donato and what he brought to the ice, it was night and day. And at the exit interviews, Bedard said he was like, I'm gonna wrap with Donato and figure out what he did to make his skating better.
Yeah.
And for him to, potentially jeopardize his spot on Hockey Canada's Olympic radar to work on his game when he's still putting up great numbers, but to those that are obsessed with the generational tag, not what they want, but he's still putting up great numbers for his age, historically great numbers. He went back and worked on the things. And I think that takes a level of professional maturity to say, look, the release is fine. The fact that I can bounce off guys against the walls is fine. I need to get away from guys. I need to handle the puck stronger. I need to be more upper body strong. Look, the kid came into camp with quads that were bigger than Kane's were before he was 23 years old.
Yeah.
So like belly button down, the kid had no problem in the NHL, but I think he made a checklist of the stuff that needed to be better for him to be an elite player. And he checked every box in one summer. So I call it professional maturity. And you're starting to see that translate into all of the skills that we saw dominate juniors, dominate the world juniors, dominate whatever he got into with his own age group, start to dominate the NHL. And, whether or not there's a conversation in 1, 2, 5 years about him being a center or a winger or whatever it ends up being, the fact that the kid is showing significant incremental improvement year 1 to year 2 to year 3, and full marks to Kyle Davidson for getting some guys that play the right style for the coaches.
Yeah, they needed that.
Like, I think everybody crapped on the Burakovsky deal because they're like, he makes $5.5 million and he's been hurt for 2 years. He sucks. And I went back and read what I wrote, like making sense of the Burakovsky deal. I'm like, there's skill there. He was a very valuable, bottom 6 guy on 2 Stanley Cup championship teams. And he was good enough on the Colorado team. When you look at that top 6, their third line would have been top 4 or 5 in a lot of other places. Maybe if he's healthy, like Mikheyev, like Dickinson, maybe he's a dude. And look, his zone entries have been a game changer for Bedard on that line.
Yeah. So we wouldn't be getting this out of Joey Veleno? That's what you're saying?
No. I mean, God bless Joey Veleno, but I think it's like Riley Stillman. Like, you're a footnote on one of the better trades at the Hawks.
Oh, Riley Stillman. Gate
Yeah.
would have a soliloquy on that guy.
Yeah. That's a good one.
I love the moves that, the lack of moves, I think, is understated. The specificity of the guys that he's targeted, knowing that, the way that Bedard shoots at the NHL level, there's going to be loose change. Tyler Bertuzzi is a vacuum cleaner at that. Yep. You need someone to help him get in the zone. Andrei Burakovsky is excellent at entering the zone with pace and puck control. Is he Marian Hossa? No, but is he really good at it? Yeah. And I think you put all those pieces together without knowing how much better Bedard got in one summer, and it's a completely different Blackhawks makeup. And I keep saying, Jeff Blashill has his stuff buttoned up, and I love the coaching staff that he brought in. I think Michael Pekka, for guys that actually do the defensive end of the rink, guys like Nazar, Slaggert, he's going to be incredible. The fact that Vellucci had Nazar at the World Championships and saw what he can do, and all of a sudden Nazar's on the bumper on the top power play unit. Surprise! Where do you think he had 10 points at the World Championships? So, I think it's just a confluence of a lot of things finally clicking and going very well. That's making it easy for these young kids to come into the NHL and look really, really comfortable. And they've drafted really well too. Let's just be honest. And Bowman's last couple years might have been his best drafts. He didn't leave an empty cupboard, so we'll give him a little bit of credit. But
we don't give Stan Bowman credit on this show, Tab.
But I give him an ounce because he did leave some pieces behind that are going to turn into something now. But they've drafted really well. The fact that they're actually, God forbid, developing kids in Rockford and using the AHL as it's supposed to be, which is a complete seismic change from the previous regime. And then they're not rushing people, but they're being very calculated with who and what and how and why they add guys and retain guys. I think that whole package together is why, the Blackhawks, right now are on that fringe wild card conversation after 20% of the season.
Yeah. No, great calls on all of it. Yeah, I guess maybe I'll give Stan Bowman a little credit. I mean, Ryan Green's been great. I think he was a Bowman draft pick. I think that was his last.
I think Greener was, Slaggert was, Comesso was, Del Mastro was, Nolan Allen was, Crevier was.
Gotcha.
So a lot of the depth pieces that I think are still ascending and are going to end up having really nice roles on this team were guys that he drafted in the last couple of years that he was there. And, thankfully I'll let them go to college and stay in junior long enough that somebody else could develop them professionally.
No, that's smart. I mean, I'm a big Ryan Green guy, and so I talk about him probably way too much. But 3 years being the premier center at Boston University, playing in every situation.
Right. A captain at Boston University.
Captain at BU. I mean, 3 Frozen Fours, and then and then he comes to Chicago, and he's got Michael Pekka,
right,
on the bench for his style of game is perfect. Yeah. So
I had an awesome conversation with Ryan Green today after practice. I wrote about it.
Nice.
He's so smart. Yeah. Like, he just gets the game, and I think like the fact that you can watch him come up as a fourth line center and work between like Foligno and Doc. And then 5 days later, he's skating on the wing and splitting faceoffs with Connor Bedard and doing that effectively. And now he's probably back to a second, third line center role because Dickinson and Nazar are going to be out against New Jersey. Like, the fact that he can seamlessly move up and down. He's got way more offensive game than he's ever showed. But like you said, at BU, he was a primary penalty killer. And when you have guys like Cole Yzerman and Macklin Celebrini in the lineup with you, you don't have to go score 30 goals because you've got 7 other guys who can do that.
Yeah, and he's always on the right side of the puck.
Yeah,
always on the right side of the puck.
And I just it was a great conversation. I wrote it up if you feel like going over to Bleacher Nation and reading it.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
One of the things that he confirmed to me too, and this is so slept on by so many people, but I truly believe that the smartest thing that Kyle Davidson's front office has done is taking the development camp off ice, which sucks for fans because you want to go see Connor Bedard 3 hours after he got drafted. But every single young guy that I've talked to a man has said, we are all best friends. We're brothers. We get along with each other. We've had group chats from the jump. Bedard's rookie year, while the macro media is talking about him rolling his eyes and hating it and wanting to be a Canuck, I'm asking him in the locker room, like, how do you stay focused? He was like, I'm literally I go home and check the box scores of Nazar at Michigan and Moore and Rinzel at Minnesota and Lardis and Brantford. Like, he was focused on the next generation. He's texting with these guys. He's texting with Del Mastro and Allen after they were in the World Juniors together. They're all friends. They're all rooting for each other. And I think that the hard byproduct is going to be when some of these guys don't make the NHL and they end up going somewhere else.
Yeah.
But like, he was like, I think, what did he say? Something to the effect of like the whole crew was jacked when Oliver Moore got called back up.
Yeah.
Like, we were so glad that he was back, and we can't wait for Lardis to get here. And like, we can't wait for Slags to be back. So like, you've got this literally, like, it feels like a fraternity sometimes with Foligno in the corner being Vince Vaughn, like doing this whole like life together because it's a college age lineup for the most part with a couple of stragglers.
Yeah.
But they get along so well. And every one of them has said, we got each other's numbers in development camp and we just started talking. And even the college guys that couldn't show up for NHL camp still in the group chats, and they're all still rooting for each other. And it's awesome.
Yeah. That's what and I'll give these guys some time to ask you some questions too, Tab. But one of the things that we were talking about earlier is, and Jimmy mentioned this, we're curious the general feel in the locker room with Jeff Blashill now, in charge and commanding the room. And has that garnered, just a different vibe for the team in the locker room as far as pregame and practices, what is being asked of the team, the general feel of what the game plan is. Obviously he's doing the 7 in the back and 11 up front, which seems to be working, particularly with young defensemen and sheltering them a little bit and not asking them to play too many minutes. But what have you noticed through your interactions there? And is there anything that you can comment on that you've seen?
You've got young guys who are just breaking into the league. So in a lot of cases, look, guys like Rinzel, Moore, Green, they played a handful of games for Anders at the end of last season. Mm-hmm. So they don't know what NHL structure is like. They don't know what the grind is like. You've got some other young guys that are relatively new to the league, but There's an old school element. Like today at practice, they were doing a real simple drill, and it started to get a little sloppy, and everybody got to take a couple laps, and we dropped a couple F-bombs and hit a reset button and started the whole drill over again. So there's a little bit of an old school mentality. I think he does a great job of. It's interesting because people will ask him about analytical things, and he'll say, well, it's the numbers that we like, that we care about. And it's like, they've still got, like, people forget Stan Bowman came to the Blackhawks to develop the analytical models that they tracked people with. And that's what got the Blackhawks ahead of the curve and the evolution of using, darker, deeper metrics to figure out quality of play and puck possession and stuff like that. But, he talks about the metrics that they care about. So there's a little inside hockey happening behind closed doors that they're tracking and value more than Natural Stat Trick is going to afford us, or Money Puck is going to tell us. But I think that I think stylistically, I think personality wise, I see a lot of similarities between him and Luke Richardson. I think the difference is he's got a young team that's got a crap load of energy and a lot of go get it and a lot of skill. Awesome. And last year, Luke Richardson was handed a boat full of Winnebagos and said, hey, go try to win some games. So you know what? I think I've said this before, Luke Richardson will be a very good head coach in the National Hockey League someday. It might be before Christmas in Nashville.
Yeah, that's a good point. They're not looking.
But he didn't get the run with the reinforcements that Blashill's getting. But I think turning the roster over as much as they did was a natural time to bring in a fresh voice. Sure. And you've got old guys that are buying into it, and you've got great veteran leaders like Foligno, Dickinson, Murphy. These guys are soldiers that are going to do what's needed, and they're going to get hurt and they're going to play through it and do everything that they can to buy in. So when you've got old guys that play the game the right way, it certainly helps a coach to put a new system in. But, Foligno says all the time, like, we're having fun. Like, this is the most fun I've had in years because there's zero pressure to succeed except what we put on ourselves. And we're not getting to the point that we want to be at, but we're exceeding everybody else's. So we're allowed to smile now because, people aren't going to think that we're taking things lightly or anything.
Yeah, love that. Love that. Jimmy, what do you got?
Well, we've been focusing, I feel like, a ton on the young forwards. I kind of want to shift over to this defensive core, these 7 guys that they're throwing out there. We got, in my opinion, probably the Blackhawk with the most, microscopes on him, and Artyom Levshunov. He's got 6 points in his last 7 games, obligatory 6-7 joke. And since joining Power Play One, they're 5 of 7 with him there. And I've noticed too, like, they're putting him on the PK. They put him on the PK against Detroit, against Calgary. Probably more of a trial run, but he didn't look out of place. Along with Levshunov, you got, young guys like Rinzel, Crevier is doing real well. And then, of course, he feels like a veteran, but he's on like 24, Vlasic. What can you tell me about, like, how this, how Blashill's system and, obviously his coaching staff has really changed the outlook of this defensive group, especially Levshunov? He really, especially in the last 7 games, he really looks like he's settling in. He's still making those young guy mistakes, but he feels a little more refined, a little less jumpy, and a little more organized out there in the ice. What are you seeing covering this team with that defensive unit?
Yeah, I think lots of great stuff there. It seems so simplistic to say, well, if I've got 2 veteran right shot defensemen who can kill penalties, and I've got 2 really young green right shot defensemen who I would love to not have to force to kill penalties, and I've got all 4 of them available to me, why not just play them every night? And so that's what he's doing. And it's very simple. I don't want to push Rinzel and Levshunov into killing penalties and playing 26 minutes a night before they're ready. Connor Murphy can play 14, 15 minutes, and Lord willing, no more than 6 of them are on the penalty kill. It'd be great if they avoided the box more frequently, because I think that might help with some of the don't need to have 4 right shot defensemen. But I think, we'll start with Levshunov. I think that a lot of the scrutiny that he's under in Chicago is from the Demidov.
100%. Yeah.
And then you've got the Zeev Buium stands, and then you've got the Zane Parekh stands, and you've got these people that just refuse to enjoy life, who just want to tell you about everything that everyone else has except for what the Blackhawks have. And the reality is he was widely considered the number 2 prospect by a fairly decent margin for a reason. And it's because, like Anton Frundell, he came with a 25-year-old man's body.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Andy, I think we're both old enough. Jimmy, I don't know you quite as well, but like if you're old enough to remember what Duncan Keith looked like when he came out with Brent Seabrook,
yeah,
like a lot of the same stuff, and a lot of it is he's got insane instincts. He's got a truckload of jump. He's a dog chasing a car bumper every second of every shift, and it's in a lot of it's similar to what we saw Connor Bedard go through. Like, he's figuring out when he can do things and what he can get away with, and when he's going to get completely blowtorched at the NHL level.
Yeah.
And God bless Wyatt Kaiser for going from a guy that a lot of people were like happy to raise their hand and say, well, they're not paying him because he's an 8th defenseman, to being like the metronome on the blue line, who is like,
that was me. Sorry.
Andy, you're not alone. And I think that based on the body of work that he presented over 2 years with ups and downs from Rockford, that case was very easy to make. And
yes,
but that goes back to the difference between this regime and Bowman. We have so much Stan Bowman PTSD in the Blackhawks fan base that someone getting sent to Rockford a second time feels like you're going to Alcatraz for the rest of your life. And now it's like because you're hearing the same stuff about Landon Slaggert right now. Like you're hearing the same stuff about Slaggert now, and there's nothing wrong with Slaggert. He was just not healthy during training camp and needs to get his legs under him, and he can't do that getting 7 or 8 minutes at the NHL level. So go dominate Rockford. Kaiser missed all of training camp last year with a health issue, and he just needed to get his legs under him. And when he came up, he was rushing because he was trying to earn it because he's in the final year of his contract. God help us if, somebody doesn't get paid. And, this year he came up, he was settled. He knew what his job was. And, I've made the comparison to Trevor Van Riemsdyk a lot with him. I think the skating is good. He's a willing shot blocker. He's better with the puck than you think. He can skate it out of trouble pretty well. And a lot of people laugh at Trevor Van Riemsdyk. I'm like, the dude's been a number 4 defenseman in the league for like 10 years. I'm not knocking Wyatt Kaiser when I compare him to Trevor Van Riemsdyk, but the way that he's been able to just kind of saddle up next to Levshunov and help him and kind of clean up the mistakes as much as he can has been impressive. I think Crevier is blowing away anything that you would ever want from a 7th round pick. So God bless the kid.
Yeah,
the only thing I hate about Crevier is he's taller than me when he's sitting in his stall and I'm trying to have a conversation. Which is true of Vlasic too. Like, I love watching the two of them go out on the ice together next to Bedard and Nazar because it looks like the odd couple and a couple of their children. And I think Vlasic is settling in really nicely with Rinzel. Frankly, I'm a little surprised that more people aren't complaining about the lack of offensive numbers from Sam Rinzel at this point, when most people were like throwing money on him to win the Calder before the year started. And you assume that he was just going to magically turn the power play into something different. And I think what we're realizing right now is that Levshunov might be the perfect right shot defenseman for that top unit. He skates well, he's physical, but he has a hard shot that stays low. If you watch, he doesn't get the puck more than an inch or two off the ice, barely ever. And I think that creates a lot of loose change, and a lot of guys who are going to block shots expect stuff that's 4 or 5 inches off the ice at this point at the NHL level. If it's coming from the point, you assume that you're trying to go top shelf. And so him, unloading the cannon at ice level, I think is a little bit of a change up for a lot of people trying to defend it. So I've got no problem with what Rinzel's doing. I think that he's carrying the mail at 5-on-5, And
Yeah.
I think that that's a really heavy lift for a guy who had 9 games of experience before this year.
He hasn't filled out yet either. I mean,
No. He's trying, and I've offered. I'm like, if you need my weight gain program, it rhymes with Chipotle. If I won a gold at the World Juniors and had free Chipotle for a year, I would have easily put on those 50 pounds.
There you go. Yeah.
But no, I think what I like about Blashill is with the young defensemen, they've got some guys who are maybe not NHL old, but I think a little bit more mature in their game.
Right.
In Kaiser and Vlasic and Murphy, who are willing to accept the roles that they've been given and play those roles and take a little bit of the heat off of the young guys. And that's afforded them the ability to learn and grow and make their mistakes. And Blashill said, we're going to make mistakes, but we're going to make up for it with effort and structure. Yeah. And when you've got what will soon be, if it's not already the fastest team in the National Hockey League, you can make up for mistakes when Levshunov gets burned on a bad pinch and you've got one of more Mikheyev or Nazar chasing the puck down. You'll be surprised at how many back checks turn out pretty well because you've got elite speed all over the ice.
Speed demons out there. That's for sure. Shawnee, you got any questions?
Yeah, so on the vein of speed kills, do you think Ilya Mikheyev is the unsung hero of this team?
Absolutely. Yep. I love it. Yeah, he was a guy that scored 22 goals for Toronto. And it's funny to me to look at these guys. We talk about Burakovsky and Dickinson and Mikheyev, and the fact that they got these, we'll call them middle-class deals that were a huge salary spike for them individually from teams that desperately needed something specific and then got hurt or didn't fit. In the case of Dickinson, didn't fit the 4 coaches that he had in 2 years because, it's the coaches that are the problem in Vancouver. And they need to get rid of the salary dump. And it's understanding that just getting healthy sometimes is a game changer. And when your pro scouts identify what a player's best at and you weaponize that, it's amazing how successful guys can be in the NHL. And I think my biggest takeaway from Kyle Davidson's tenure thus far is please overpay the hell out of your pro scouts, because they've done a great job of identifying guys who have more game than you're getting out of them where they are and bringing them in to do specific things. And when you look at what Mikheyev, especially when Mikheyev and Dickinson are on the ice together, I mean, I'm not saying it's Taves and Hossa because that was basically, half of the Holy Trinity hanging out in the front, but look at their numbers when they're together on the ice. It's insane. Yeah. And the fact that they were both salary dumps who sucked and who Canucks fans couldn't get rid of fast enough, who ended up getting Selke votes in their first year in Chicago on terrible Blackhawks teams.
Do you think
speaks volumes about it?
Do you think in terms of the inside analytics that you talk about that probably Bowman and then Jeff Greenberg continued, do you think that helps the pro scouts find guys that are underutilized at other places? I think that there are models that you want to build out, but I think at the end of the day, what you've looked at is they've found guys that fit the style of play that they want to play. Yeah. And I think last year, my read on the 2024 free agency class was that they went out and found veterans who might have a little value at the trade deadline. They were going to be, doorstops until the kids were ready. But a lot of the guys played the game in a specific way that you hope the young guys in the organization would be able to watch and learn from. You would love it if Landon Slaggert had a career that's comparable to what Craig Smith has had. Now, the Craig Smith that was here, washed. But the Craig Smith that we watched for 10 years in Nashville, I mean, he was a you-know-what to the Blackhawks for 10 years in Nashville. You look at Pat Maroon's game, and I think if you could get, half of that out of Colton Dach, you'd be thrilled.
and not just the the sideshow, like I'm going to go out and punch people tonight part. The playing hard in the corners, getting in front of the net, that element. You look at Teuvo Teravainen, the way that he's a really effective all-around two-way forward, and you look at what Frank Nazar is, and you're like, if he could grow up to be Teuvo Teravainen, that would be pretty cool. I think what we've seen so far is Frank Nazar might have a higher offensive ceiling than Teravainen has shown. But it failed because the guys, I think the expiration date was a lie on the milk carton, and it didn't happen. And frankly, I appreciate that the Blackhawks didn't panic and try to rush some other guys up. They said, no, Korchinski is staying down. I don't care if Alec Martinez is not doing it. I don't care if TJ Brody is ass. We're going to leave Korchinski in Rockford to develop and be the best version of him that he can be. No. And I think, like, if you watch Rockford games this year, Korchinski's so much more physically put together. He's so much more confident with the puck. There's a reason he's among the AHL leaders for defensemen and points. And I still think there's a there with Kevin Korchinski. And frankly, I think if you've got three defensive pairs with Rinzel, Levshunov, and Korchinski on them, you're going to be an absolute nightmare for teams to play against, because you've got a guy on all three pairs that can take the thing and go coast to coast, and you're wondering where, like, who made the cloud of dust that I'm standing in. So I think when you look at this year's team, they were able to be more laser focused around some specific skill sets because they had a better gauge on when the kids were going to be ready and who they were going to be able to push up. I'm not 100% that Ryan Green was going to be a guy that they could push, but he's sure, like, they said, hey, okay, we need you right now. And he said, well, you're going to need me for a long time because I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like he's going anywhere.
Right. And I think that, the good news is they've got some guys now who might have a fairly significant amount of trade value, so that when Landon Slaggert is ready to come back, which, by the way, they never took his name tag off his locker at Fifth Third.
Okay.
Just, it's worth pointing out that usually a guy goes down and it'll disappear until he comes back, but maybe they'll leave the stall empty. Slag's name is still on his locker at Fifth Third. And I think that it's really just a matter of getting his legs under him before he comes back.
Gotcha.
But if they, decide that there's a time that somebody gets desperate to change, their internal story and find something that they can afford that fixes a huge glaring problem, there will be hockey trades to be made. And this isn't just a grabbing draft picks anymore situation. This is, you're making hockey trades to improve the future. And if it's bringing picks back, that's only because you've got a young player to fill that spot adequately for now and the next 3 to 5 years. But I think that the Blackhawks have got some guys in walk years. I think Mikheyev, Dickinson, two guys at the top of the list who could very easily get a 1 or 2 year extension and could very, very easily bring back a shockingly strong return at the trade deadline because of the specific skills that they bring to the table.
Awesome. Wow. Are you a believer in this year's team? I mean, I know that's kind of a very broad stroke right now. I mean, we're 16 games into it. The Blackhawks are third in the Central. It's so early. So much can happen. Is pie in the sky playoffs this year, or are we in a position where I think if we were all to predict, we'd say they'd probably just miss it. But who knows? Can they keep this roll going? Can they sustain this kind of goaltending with the amount of shots that they take every night?
I'll start with the shots thing, because I think that's kind of become a hot button, right? When you look at the all situation shot attempts were like 85-39 in Detroit. When you're shorthanded for a sixth of the game as you were in Detroit, that's going to influence the numbers a little bit. When you're beating a team up pretty good in the third period, they're going to start getting desperate and trying more stuff. For the last probably 5-7 years, I've leaned more heavily on scoring chances than shots on goal, because there was a game last year that perfectly speaks to why I started to back away from shots on goal when I think it was a Minnesota game last year where Seth Jones admitted after the game that with like 8 seconds left in the first period, he just launched one at the goalie's head from center ice because they didn't have a shot on goal yet in the period, and they didn't want to go to the room with a donut on the board. So like if it's just within like the blue paint and the goalie touches it, it's a shot on net. So I think the NHL is a little liberal with the shot numbers. But I think when it comes to believing in this year's team, two things. One, while the PDO numbers and other underlying numbers at this point would say not sustainable, and a lot of people will happily tell us it's not sustainable. My only caveat to not sustainable is what happens if all these young guys continue to get better and more comfortable in the NHL? Like if we're just scratching the surface of what Colton Duck and Ryan Green and Artyom Levshunov and Sam Renzel and Wyatt Kaiser and Louis Crevier and Connor Bedard and Frank Nazar and Oliver Moore, and I just named like 13 players who are kind of just scratching the surface of what they could be in the NHL. If they all continue to improve, why not? And the huge asterisk on that is before the season, I think a lot of huge Blackhawks optimists, and people will paint me in that corner, and I will raise my hand and say, yeah, probably.
I like it.
But like, if you are a huge Blackhawks optimist, you're like, they could go to 85 points this year, and Blashill could be on the Jack Adams watch list and not sniff a playoff spot because the Central is the hardest division in hockey.
Yeah, it's a wagon.
And then, we're a month and a half into the season, and the Central is ass from the middle down. Like, I don't think anyone in their right mind thought that Minnesota would be in the McKenna conversation right now. They were supposed to be a playoff team. The St. Louis Blues were telling us all summer that they were on the rise, right? Like, we're going to get a consistent Robert Thomas and a healthy Jordan Kyrou, blah, 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 blah. And
now they're open for business. They want to sell everybody.
Trash, and you're trying to give your captain away with 3 years left on his contract.
And a no trade clause.
Yeah, like and like you're literally like putting a for sale sign in Jordan Kyrou's front yard. Like the fact that Nashville's veterans haven't figured out how to get their crap together. Like the fact that the Blackhawks are going places like Seattle, who are massively exceeding expectations right now, playing good hockey, and Detroit, who are near the top of their division when the Hawks went in and whooped their ass. You're beating teams that you're supposed to beat. You're supposed to beat the Flames by a touchdown, right? Like,
sure.
But how for the last 7 years, the Blackhawks haven't done that. You end up stuck between 55 and 75 points because you screw around in games that you're supposed to win and make it interesting, and then you're exhausted for the game that might be hard a couple nights later because you expended all this energy trying to win a 3-2 overtime game against a team that hadn't won in a month. They're handling their business. They're learning. They're growing. I'm not going to put a flag in the ground that they're going to make the playoffs this year, but the fact that they're as young as they are and we're seeing the amount of game-by-game improvement, both from the players and adjustments that are working from the coaches, like moving Levshunov to PP1. Why not say 90 points are in the cards this year and see what that does? In the Western Conference, look, LA's ass. Like Anaheim is blowing people up and Seattle's having a really good run, but Edmonton's treading water in the shallow end.
Yeah.
So like so many teams are underwhelming right now. You can play yourself out of the playoffs in October, November. You can't play yourself in. But if everyone around you is trying to play themselves out, like the Hawks are in a much better position than I think a lot of people realize, because so many teams in the Western Conference have gotten off to terrible, terrible starts.
Yeah.
So
it's a good call.
I think they're going to keep getting better. And I think that the longer they're relevant and interesting, the more pressure it puts on the front office to maybe add instead of subtract. And if that adding is from internal sources like a Slaggert, a Lardis, or if that's doing making a hockey trade to benefit the club now and for the next couple of years, awesome. But I don't know. My optimist hat says if the young guys keep getting better, why not?
Yeah, I like it. That's awesome. Love it.
All right, I have a non-serious question for Tab here. How did you get the black jersey from Fanatics?
The very, very 100% real answer is I don't know.
You have a secret admirer at Fanatics?
It just showed up.
Awesome.
Completely unannounced.
Follow-up question. Can you send them my way?
Yeah. So, the long story short is I don't know where it came from. I know it came from Fanatics, but I don't know why it came to my house. I can say that it very specifically came to my house, but I don't know why, and I'm not sure why they wouldn't tell me to not share it if it wasn't supposed to be shared.
Yeah, some viral marketing there.
First compared to that Tampa game were fun in the mentions, let me tell you.
That's awesome. Well, Tab, we can't thank you enough for joining us tonight and dropping some knowledge on the Hawks. Obviously we're all really excited, and we get together once a week, and to have you on here, someone who's in tune and following the team as closely as you are, it's great to be optimistic about this team. It's great to see the progress they're making. It's good to go into hockey games every night being like, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen tonight.
It's the optimistic what's going to happen, not the who's going to fall over themselves and
right.
their way to the locker room.
Yeah, who am I going to be upset with tonight and tomorrow morning? No, it's definitely it's a different vibe. It's starting to happen. It's starting to take shape, and Davidson's done such a great job. So, well, thanks so much for joining us, and fellas, good to see you this week. I think we'll sign off for the week. I'm Andy Campbell with Sean Fitzgerald, Jimmy O'Malley, and Tab Bamford. Thank you so much for joining us on the Rinkcast tonight. And go Hawks tomorrow night, hosting the Devils. Be a good game.
Get your coffee and your bourbon ready.
There you go. 8:30.
Yeah.
Why not have New Jersey, Chicago start at 9:00 Central? That's what all the kids want. Bedard and Jack Hughes for only the third time, and it starts at 10:00 Eastern. Good job.
Get your sleep tonight, folks. That's for sure. All right. Thanks so much.